Everybody, wait a minute. Well, everybody, wait a minute. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What's up, everybody? Welcome. Come on in. Let the groove invite you. You know it is. We have a packed show this morning. A lot of folks coming through. Jihad Abdulmumit. Iron Rivera's coming through. Peachy Yaws in the building. Brother Diallo's coming through. It's going to be a packed house. Yeah, keep me right there. Everybody, wait a minute. And you know what? Let me shoot this real quick. I used to, some time ago, when my half-brother, my big brother, Jamil Muhammad, I had the pleasure of going on a little tour with him throughout the South and with the Nation of Islam, right? And at the time, shout out to Jamil, he might even be in the audience at some point this morning. He was doing the fundraising. His role in the roster of events was to encourage contributions to the nation. And I remember one of the things he would do he would talk about, to help the process, he would invite people to go outside and get in if they needed a ride to the ATM is what he was saying. Come on outside. We got, the caddy waiting. We got the OPs in the deck. We'll drive you in style and air conditioning. That's how I feel here as I share with you the launch of our BPM Fall Fundraiser. So as we get started this morning, we have a lot of projects. We've already told you about the Cuba documentary we're involved with. We have several more coming. We have a big announcement coming in probably December. I can't say any more than that right now. But we will need as much support from you as we can get to expand and build out these surprises and the projects we already have running. So please, I'm going to drop the link in the show description. I'm going to drop the link now in the chat. If at all possible, drop a couple dollars on this fundraiser. Help support the channel beyond what you already are doing. By liking, sharing, viewing. If you can, share the link with others and encourage them to do the same. And it should be a little easier to click those clicks when you got the pocket rocket behind you like this. So anyway, please do check that out. And more to come on that all week long on the remix. And on my show next week, we'll be talking more about it with more information coming. But wanted to just let you all know that our fall fundraiser has officially begun. And please do support it any way you possibly can. With that, let's get the show started officially right here at I Mix What I Like at Black Power Media. Thanks everybody back. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
Let me show you suckers how to ball out here. Oh man, let's get it together here. Oh, layup. Oh, shot. Oh, three. Oh, it's like Brick City out here. Mid-range. Oh my goodness, I can't buy a bucket out here. Missed the whole damn basket. Oh my goodness, what's going on, man? My game is looking trash. Oh, here we go. Black Power Media shirt. Now we cooking. Tree. I'm taking all three of y'all with these right here. Between the legs. Oh my goodness, behind the back. Layup. Oh, did he just do a reverse? He is in beast mode out here. I ain't gotta look, it's falling. Oh my goodness, this guy is going 3, 2, 1. Kobe. Nice. Black Power Media, baby. Nice. Empower yourself. Go get you some of that Black Power Media again. Right here, blackpowermedia.org. Yeah.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, right on, right on. What is up, world? Welcome again back to I Mix What I Like right here at Black Power Media. I'm very happy to be your host, Jared Ball. We got in the building, as I said already, my main man, Geechee Yaw, and Hiram Rivera is in the building. Very excited. What's up, brother? Good to see you. Welcome to the show.
Morning.
Welcome back to the platform. What's up, everybody? Diallo's popping in. What's up? What's up, Diallo? Good morning. Good morning. So real quick, and I owe you an apology, Hiram, because in the excitement of connecting and you helping us get our special guest who's going to join us as soon as he can, Jihad Abdulmumit, I didn't prepare a proper intro for you, a proper bio. So if you would do me a favor, do us all a favor, just tell us a little bit about your work. I just know you as a good brother who's been involved with political prisoners.
Yeah, I'm just Kamal's boy. I'm just Kamal's boy. Yes. There you go.
And Kalanji's nemesis. Kamal's boy and Kalanji's nemesis.
We don't talk to them people from Bridgeport. I'm from New Haven, Connecticut. We do not talk to them goblins from Bridgeport.
Right on. But seriously, tell us a little bit about the work you've been involved in.
Sure.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, so I'm Hiram Rivera. I'm here in the city of Philadelphia, been here for like 12 years. Member of the Malcolm X grassroots movement since 2005. Member of the Puerto Rican independence movement since I was 19. So it's like 1996. And my work has been primarily, my professional work has been as an organizer. An actual organizer running campaigns, youth organizer, education justice issues, criminal justice issues, and now I serve as a director of a national organization supporting abolition and police reform campaigns across the country and in Puerto Rico.
And what's that called? And please, you know what? Please share. Yeah, I got to get caught. I got to get all that information.
So the organization is called the Community Resource Hub for Safety and Accountability. I'll drop the link in.
Yeah, please. And then I'll make sure I put it in the show description as well. Yeah.
Sure.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's my 9 to 5. And then on the side, like I said, has been doing work with MXGM and the Puerto Rican independence movement around different issues, and political prisoners being one, and political prisoners being the first political campaign and political activity that I got involved in as a teenager.
Right on. Thanks for that. Diallo, what's up, man? It's been a minute. Good to see you again. Geechee, welcome to you as well. And thanks to you both for your patience as we did these Dr. James Turner commemorations these last couple of Fridays. And I beg your forgiveness for the time. I appreciate that. But it's good to see you all as well. Anything you all want to update us on or let us know about or speak on real quick? Brother Jihad just texted and said he is doing the people's business, taking care of his daughter, something involving a bus and a bus stop. So he'll be on as soon as he can, but we appreciate that. And, but fellas, welcome. What's going on?
Yeah, thank you. Good to be back. So we just finished the conversation with Missouri's alternative for the death penalty. And so we still got the Black August trivia coming up. So anybody interested, please connect with us.
Barter and build.
Yeah. And I also just want to tell y'all, happy Black Philanthropy Month. The real BPM in the streets. So
you sent me that. I had not heard of this. We can talk about this. We can come back to this for sure. But in addition to as we mentioned before, this being co-opted as what was it? Black Business Month?
Black Business Month and Black Philanthropy Month. And
then now you showing me and they literally use BPM and beat us to it because they've been around since 2011. BPM, Black Philanthropy Month, and I looked up and one of the we'll come back to this, but one of the women that runs it, in her bio, she's described as having studied social finance.
Yeah,
SoFi, which I don't think I've ever heard of that, and did a quick look, and it's something that, just like crypto, emerged after the 2008 Wall Street crash as the investment class was trying to find new ways for their capital to find a home. So that's what. So social finance is the marshaling of relationships with the billionaire class and the investment class. So that's oh man. So it is even more important that we all gather and have the conversations that we all gathered here to have this morning. Anyway, sorry about that. Diallo, what's up, my man? What's going on?
Oh, hey, good morning. Good morning. I'm just glad to be back. And
Okay, right on.
The thing is, I kind of get confused every time with these groups because I don't know the difference, because we complain that they extort or rob the community of funds, and then they say that they're funded and controlled by outside sources, and I'm still trying to find out which one is which. So I'm really interested in looking into this black philanthropy stuff, because I have to be honest with you, I don't mind colored folks tapping white folk pockets, for whatever hustles or whatever schemes they got going on, as long as they just keep us out of it if we ain't getting a cut.
So again, that's the missing chapter, as Hiram reminds us with his George Jackson shirt. That's the missing chapter of Blood in My Eye. The next chapter was the marshaling of the billionaire investment class to address our colonial status. Look, okay, brother Jihad is here. I'm gonna let that one go. Let me just quickly thank you very much, Tafari, for the big super chat. Really appreciate that. Shout out to you, Jared. I'll ask for a refund on this, but if you don't do a hate award show this year, oh man, we might have to owe you a refund. We have to talk about that, because the hate awards crew, we've had a conversation about that not even too long ago. And I'm afraid that the hate awards was for a different medium in a different time, but YouTube and the new levels of surveillance and the new vibe in the community I don't think supports the hate awards in its most honest form. So I don't know. But I definitely appreciate the super chat. Really do appreciate the support, but we do. And if we have to work out the refund, let's do it. That's not a problem. And welcome to Rashad and to Manny Nile for moving from just routine remixer to actual member of the channel. Appreciate you for doing that, Imani, and welcome. All right. So let me just do it. Let's cleanse the space real quick. And prepare for our special guest, and come right back after this quick break here at I Mix What I Like. Don't go. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, welcome back to I Mix What I Like It here at Black Power Media. Joining us once again, and well, actually, maybe for the first time on this platform, is Jihad Abdulmumit. Very, very special guest, and an honor to have him join us. And I want to again shout out, before we go any farther, Black Man Build, for the conversation that they hosted the other night with Jihad and Ashanti Alston. Something that I would love to see extended and recreated here as well. And that was the inspiration for this particular program, but among many other things, and please check the link in the show description for a more full bio. But Jihad has, among many other things, is a community activist, motivational speaker, author, and playwright. He's been a member of the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army, and spent many years, unfortunately, as a political prisoner for that work. And he now heads up the Jericho movement on behalf of political prisoners. And we welcome him back to the platform. Jihad, good morning. Welcome back. Good to see you.
Yeah, good morning. Yes, good morning, my dear brothers. And thank you so much, Jared. Assalamu alaikum.
So I just want to get started from the other night you said something that I texted Hiram afterwards. I was like, I tried to sleep on it, and for some reason what you said the other night, the way you said it, the energy hit me in, I don't know, in a different way, in a stronger way. but specifically, and then we can go wherever you want to go from here. But I definitely would like for us to start with you extending your comment about the state of our struggle and the fact that the political prisoners who we have seen be able to be released have had to forego their recognition of their prior struggle and commitment because we did not have a struggle that was able to put demands on their freedom. Something like that. I did an insufficient job but I wanted to sort of at least get you to remind where you were in that moment and have us pick up from there, because I thought it was a very powerful statement. And anyway, so if you could clean up what I just said and explain that point, and then let's go, if you would, from there, please.
Right, definitely. So, well, thank you again, and I hope everybody be able to chime in because I would love feedback.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's all about on real-time critical thinking, not dogmatic preset conditions that you're holding on to because you've been holding on to them for a while. And you don't want to let them go, regardless of what the objective reality around you is all about. But Jared, if you don't mind, I just wanted to make an announcement that our co-chair for the Jericho movement, Frank Vergara, is very instrumental in the Puerto Rican liberation movements, passed away last night. So I just wanted to lift up his name. He was battling, I believe, colorectal cancer for some time. Staunch soldier, righteous history. We're going to put out probably a ton of information on him starting today. So I just wanted to acknowledge him and recognize him and bring him his name and who he is to your attention. Yeah, it's a big loss.
Thank you for that. No, yeah, I'm very, very sorry to hear that. And thank you for that. And anytime you or anyone else wants to come back, talk more about him and that related work, we're more than happy to accommodate that. But rest in power. Indeed. And thanks. Yeah.
Rest in power for sure. Well, Jared, I guess I could start with this lately, because I just like you and the other dear brothers on and the sisters that's been on and listening, kind of looking at our reality here in the United States in 2022. And, Amilcar Cabral said, tell no lies, claim no easy victories. So I wanted to really try for myself, real talk, constant talk to myself, and even in upholding one of the values of a Black men build, critical thinking. And it's very, very important, and it's difficult. It's difficult. It's even more difficult, I think, for old heads like myself that's been in the movement, that's taken staunch positions for decades, to really rethink our movement strategies and to keep on moving without betraying our own integrity and our own principles. And it's almost like, like I do a lot of typing and a lot of writing, but I don't know how to type correctly. This may not be the best analogy. And now to go back and try to relearn it is painful because, okay, I'm going to look at a whole sentence. I'm going to type it, and then I'm going to go back and look at it's as opposed to knowing where the keys are and not looking. So the relearning, retooling, rethinking your strategy, as opposed to going on thinking that it's working and being satisfied by having rallies with 20, 30, 40 people there, putting it up on Facebook, being proud of that because this is important. And by the way, one more preliminary statement I wanted to make is that everything I'm saying, my dear brothers and Jared, is that it's not a criticism of any of the movement. It's not a criticism of anybody's hard work in the community. It's not a criticism of anybody's half-baked work in the community. If there's any criticism, it's only going to go to myself. So what I say, it's a critique, observation, and I am sharing it. And sometimes it may not sound the same as the choir, so to speak, that we hear talking about these particular type of issues. So I just wanted to make that clear. So anybody listening said, well, he got some nerve. He's got criticized. I've been out here all this time. So I pray that no one takes what I'm going to say in that light at all. appreciate, applaud, respect, uplift, and uphold, and hopefully on a page of collaboration with any and all righteous endeavors to free our political prisoners, to better the quality of life, Black, brown, and indigenous people, and as a consequence, all people, all working class and poor and oppressed people in this country and around the world. All right, so here's what I'm thinking. I'm looking, so I'm the chairperson of the National Jericho Movement, and over the last years, really, I'm beginning to define myself as a revolutionary administrator, because I'm always on the phone, talking to the parole board, leaving messages to the governor's office of some state where a freedom fighter is incarcerated, following up on that, writing a ton of letters to prisoners and to our not only our freedom fighters that are political prisoners, but to the trove of letters I'm constantly getting and the requests, and really looking at, if you really ask yourself, somebody that's been in prison like Sundiata Kohli, who recently released, for over 5 decades, or how are they really getting out? What little hole did they get out through? What means and mechanism really led to their release? And I think a lot of sisters and brothers who's actually involved in very different levels and degrees in campaigns to free political prisoners, they may not actually know that. Some people, brothers and sisters, that resonate with rallies and speeches that really pump you up, all of which is so important. They may not realize that we have to keep that kind of separate, away from the actual campaign to free somebody. So the rally, free all political prisoners, and given the history of what them sisters and brothers have done, like this, and damning the system and F the police, whatever, because some rallies go there. And it's just, it's interesting, that you may not know that rally and demonstration, the purpose of that is to educate the people and to get them involved. That rally may not actually be directly, maybe indirectly over a period of time, but and that's remotely so. It's directly related to getting somebody out of prison. What gets somebody out of prison is that you have so many arrows in your sheath that you can pull out, that you can put in the bow, you can bend it back and fire, and you better hit that target, because you only got so many attempts to do this. So many times going up to the parole board before somebody passes away. So many opportunities to file for commutation of sentence. So many you only have a few opportunities for compassionate release under the rubric of COVID-19 or ailments that are just cancerous or whatever the case may be. Very few opportunities. Those opportunities really reside in making strategic phone calls, following certain talking points that mention the age of the brother, mostly the brothers. And there's a reason why that, because mostly brothers that are in prison that are known political prisoners. It doesn't mean that there aren't sisters, Joy Powell and others, but the numbers is not the same. But we can talk about that too. But that's just real talk. Okay, doesn't mean that women aren't involved in the struggle, but brothers, in this patriarchal society, and just how things, information come out to us, are the ones that are known. And there are many more brothers that are known as political prisoners, and we don't know how many women there are, sisters there are. So that's that. I just want to put that in there. Okay, so that, making these calls, following talking points that make sure that you do not mention the fact that this is a freedom fighter. You may not even mention the fact that, and just talking about the Panther political prisoners, that they were even in the Panthers, and definitely not mention that they was in the Black Liberation Army, and that they are fighting for self-determination and the freedom of our people, or anything like that. What you're going to mention in these very important talking points is their age, that they're no longer a threat to the community, that they have community support, that they have a very, very good institutional record, meaning they haven't been in trouble, which is true, because most time, I mean, if the prison wants to really vamp on you and oppress you, obviously they can always charge and hem you up for any silly thing. But on generally speaking, soldiers, political prisoners, freedom fighters, they're very disciplined in prison and not involved in the drugs and the sexual things going on there, just keeping it real talk, arguing over the TV, gambling, and didn't pay debts and all that type of infantile stuff that happens, that gang banging and things of that nature. But things do happen. But for the most part, good prison records. So these are the talking points that that we focus on, and want to make sure that the narrative of freedom fighters and liberation struggles and these things do not creep into the narrative that gets before the parole board that's actually going to be making the decision to release somebody, or in front of the judge that's actually going to make the decision to free our comrades. You don't want that to get into the mix. And so the role of pumping it up and really defining who we are resides on the streets and in the universities and our demonstrations that we have for the purpose of hopefully getting more support that will be filtered out when it comes to how that support is going to give support to freeing the political prisoners. So once you pump it up, and let's say we haven't, and I'm done in a minute so we can open up maybe but let's say we have a rally of 150 people. All right. And but the legal strategy is our brothers going before the parole board, and we have these talking points. So here now, on the other hand, we have this real militant rally, free all political prisoners, not just the one we're talking about, but everybody, mentioning their names and condemning the system of colonialism, which all is real talk. Once we get people to say that they're going to actually do something out of the 150, which may be very few. Once again, real talk. Are we going to get 150 letters? Probably not. Are we going to get 150 phone calls? Probably less chance of getting the letters. Are you going to actually call the governor's office or whatever? And so, and if you do, that militant rally and all those people that was on the streets, like that. Once we secure a commitment and that somebody's actually going to do this, they have to go through this grid of filtering to make sure that now we want you to don't say these things, but we want you to say this. Shh, say this, because brother man won't be getting out if you if you say the other stuff like that. They'll say no, and we are a threat to the community. So we're saying that they're not a threat to the community. Yeah, no, we're not going to roll out with a 9 or anything like that. That is true. But our minds are strong, powerful, and very influential. So when your enemy says that you're a threat, they are telling the truth. And when we say that they're not a threat, we're panning that off into they're not a physical threat. We're not going to get them up there and roll down on somebody, on the police, or we're not going to expropriate a bank or anything like that. So we're kind of like playing that card. But, we are a threat. Our minds are a threat. How young folks resonate with us, that's a threat to the enemy. And that is real. So when your enemy says we're there, that we are a threat, even though we try to change it to mean this and put that out in the public, when they say that, what they mean, what they really mean, and they won't say it openly neither, because that may not fly in a court, is that our minds are vibrant, full of ideas, energy, inspiration, motivation, and that's what they want to extinguish by keeping us in prison so long that you'll die there from medical ailments. So I'm just saying the state of our struggle is not such that we can demand when we say we demand the release, that demands really breaks down into writing nice letters about what a good Cub Scout we are, and could you please let us go.
Thank you for that, Jihad.
Very demoralizing. I know. I'm sorry.
No. So let me be clear. I appreciate that you said all of that, and that even this last point that you just raised, for me, it's not demoralizing. It's infuriating.
Okay.
And inspiring. So in part, when I hear like what I think was causing me to literally lose some sleep and keep reflecting on this and talking about your comments every chance I get these last couple of days is that it is an inspiration to me to step up my game, to encourage others to do the same. So I don't want you to feel like you're spreading some demoralizing message. I think quite the opposite. It's okay, like the cold water. We need to wake up and get busy. But anyway, fellas, anybody want, let me turn this over. Hiram, Diallo, Geechee, any comments, questions? If folks in the chat want to start raising up points for us to get to, please do so, and I'll get to as many of them as we can. But fellas, please, Hiram, go ahead.
No, I had a question. I've been doing political prisoner work, like I said, since I was 19. I'm starting with the Puerto Rican political prisoners back in 1996. And to what Brother Jihad said is fact, right? It has always been almost a mission impossible to get the broader movement, let alone the general public, to really throw down and engage and understand why the liberation of our warriors was so important. And just wanted to ask Brother Jihad, now that some of that has changed a little bit, because on the last call you had mentioned that there were no support committees. So when you and Ashanti and them, a lot of folks initially went in, there weren't support committees. Y'all were just in there on your own, doing what you got to do to survive. What has changed, right? What has changed since that time? But also, why, in your opinion, your assessment, has it been so difficult for the movement? And even today, right, we have like the BLMs, the Movement for Black Lives, a lot of movements that at times they will send out an email or not, right? But folks ain't really trying to put their political reputations, their resource or anything on the table to free our folks, right? We can wear Asada Taught Me t-shirts, but that's about it. And so in your assessment, why is that the case? And what has changed since the time y'all first went in to now in regards to the support committees?
Yeah, okay, good. Very good question, Hiram. Very good question, brother. And once again, I'm saying this because sometimes we hear, but we don't be listening. I'm not criticizing any movements or comrades in different movements, like saying, "Damn, Jihad, you get," no, keep up the work. Keep up the work. Like Jared said, it's better to say it's infuriating unless this is cold water. Wake up. But what has changed is that, first of all, the warriors that's still in prison, they're decades older. So when Ashanti and I, when we went to prison, and anybody else that went to prison around that time, and I'm talking about probably everybody, because this is coming right at the beginning of the 70s, when most of us were getting incarcerated for various reasons and actions, and their counterintelligence program was thriving and banging still good. Still is too, by the way, by many other names. But we were young, and I mentioned the fact that I know when I got arrested, was lawyer, man, I'm trying to come out of here. And sisters and brothers, I cannot tell you how real talk that is. But I'm 20, 21, 22, and not standing up. Imagine you getting arrested for anything in terms of the movement. Demonstration, are you going to stand up for the judge? I guess you are. It may not be a good decision to keep sitting there. I mean, if you can picture you being in court waiting to pay your traffic ticket, and the judge comes in, all rise, and half the room doesn't stand up, you'll be saying, "Bam, dang," because that is like, oh wow. So that's we were young. Our mindset as a young person, but was still in the physical part of the struggle. Now, decades later, we're older. That's on the inside. And so that's what's happening. But that's what's changed on the inside with the prisoners. What's changed on the outside is this, and I'll make it brief because I want to hear everybody's comment as a discussion, not just me talking. And I appreciate the format, Jerry. It's that I don't know if I gave Hiram on our program the other day the example of, and it may not be the best example, but back in our day, you know, in the 60s and 70s, the music industry, this, you can, you know, they had Jet Magazine. I don't even know if it exists anymore, in the top, whatever it was, 20. You can name almost all the groups pretty much. And you had album covers to, I was going to reach over from one, you know, there it was. And you had to go through a record label to get acknowledged, to get your stuff out there. But now, because of technology, you can bypass the record label. You can set your own label. You can be a YouTube sensation. They got all kinds of mediums that actually can gain you money, and some type of success on that level. And everybody is doing it. The same thing. This is only an analogy with the movement. Is back then you could name the different bigger movements: the Panthers, the BLA, Revolutionary Action Movement, Republic of New Africa, American Indian Movement, FALN. Now the Young Lords, and I know I'm missing a few right now, but just my brain is right. But Sudanese Liberation. I mean, there's these groups that popped up. You can name pretty much the Weather Underground, the Students for Democratic Society, all these groups. You can pretty much name them. Oh yeah. And if you forgot one, yeah, I remember that. Today, just like in the music industry, because of technology, there's a whole peripheral. There's zillions of organizations, you know, and they're digging deep with their own mission. And society is more diverse, and they're using technology to get their platforms. And the more this is happening, the more we may be ignoring real, true unity and working together. Because I mean, so now that has changed. And that's the second thing. Internally, we're older. Externally, there's I forget the word. I'm trying to start with the P. There's a whole bunch of different dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of organizations, all building up silos for their own acknowledgement and recognition, and holding on to their own flag, so to speak. And then the last thing, and I will shut up, is this very serious development that's naturally has taken place in plain sight. And that is the results of us struggling to better the quality of life, food, clothing, and shelter, even though we haven't kicked the can that far down the road. But Black families and brown and indigenous too, you know, those your parents are working in hard conditions, 2 jobs, sometimes 3, both parents working, single mothers working, to get their children to college. And you go there to get move out the hood, get a house in another hood, rent a bigger place, 1 bedroom, 2 now, all these things. You actually have a car. When this struggle is so 24/7 intense in your face, and it's most of the time done without any political acumen, like understand you just trying to survive. Mom is out there working. And then these little successes that we actually do have in society, all you have to do is go out, and you can see people driving up and down the streets. You know, some may be poor, but everybody's not dirt eating poor. This is America, you know. And even in the hood, you got that 60-inch flat screen and a $800 cell phone, and that car out there with them daggone $2,000 rims on it. You know, so even in that, you have a lot of little things, and that George Jackson talked about, to distract your attention from your oppression. When all of that is done, at the end of the day, people have fought for what they have, minus any type of political understanding about colonialism. But who the hell can even explain what that is in terms of the masses of people? And I'm not saying that the masses of people are ignorant, but they may be ignorant to that. And to be able to articulate it and understand it in real time in their life, now you have people that's holding on to democracy, the progress that they've made, the progress that the civil rights struggle has made. Be careful what you ask for, because you might get it. And so there you go. So now, and I'm almost done, 2022, you got, because of Barack Obama, even though he's a black face on U.S. imperialism like that, but as far as white reactionary and white supremacists are concerned, he was black still. And that said, man, we will never have this part of my expression system, this nigger get in here ever again. I don't care if he's part of us or not. He will never sit at that seat. And that backlash created an opportunity for somebody like Donald Trump. Now these white supremacists are emboldened. You will not take our white heritage away from us, and democracy is being threatened. Mainstream society is perceiving that threat. You know, my gosh, look, they attacked the Capitol. We might have attacked the Capitol. That's what I was laughing at. 30 years ago, that might have been us running up in that joint. And it just real talk. I mean, now the same us are saying, oh my God, look what they did. Look what you did. And we would have done that on any Sunday if we had the opportunity back in the 60s. What you talking about? Are you serious? We would have done that. We would have done that if we could have done that. I'm talking about revolutionaries trying to overturn this stuff. And now it's looking horrendous and scary because it's these reactionary slave masters coming out the woodwork doing it. And so now it's forced us to have no political, really revolutionary politics and organization and community to look at that with horror. We're looking at that with horror. And now you're going to have some black militants talking about imperialists, we need to overturn this. So the masses of people holding on to their dream of democracy and stability. And if we're not offering any infrastructure or model to really permeate the psychic of the people to show that we revolutionaries can do and provide in a decent way, then we'll be almost like the damn Taliban once the oppressors kicked out and send us back to the Stone Age. And the way we think now, we might, because we don't get along together. It's speak talk on most of the programs, even with the COVID. Could you say that you took the vaccine when everybody was talking about government conspiracies? I've been took my vaccine. What if I said that? I'd probably have to turn in my black card. Everybody's talking about it. You on the panel. What do you think about it, Jared? About this COVID conspiracy, the government, and all other 20 panelists have condemned it, and here you are. Yeah. I mean, and it's just an effort to try to sound as militant and revolutionary as we possibly can, you know, and try to outdo the next person with the analysis of colonialism and imperialism. But we're not doing. We're just talking to 40 people on the call. And if you don't see that, not you, but if we don't see that, then we tripping, man. I'm not tripping. There's nobody in the court. I'm a case manager in the community, in the hood. That's my job for the last 19 years coming out of prison. HIV case manager. I don't have HIV, but I started this program with Dr. Matula Shakur and a couple other comrades, Tim Blanc and them in Lewisburg. And just so happened I have a job come out to go into Poetic 360, and I be in the community every day. And I very seldom, if ever, come across somebody that's even begin to talk about the things we talk about. That's the black people. Are we that detached? Or are we just looking at it to the people that our comrades and our peers and thinking that the movement is successful? People are trying to survive out here. And they don't want to lose this sense of stability. And if we're not bringing that back to the political prisoner piece, the same thing there. I mean, we can't muster up the strength 50 years later to be able to say, how can we defend somebody that's been charged with killing a cop? Because that's what the narrative is. It lost all its political trappings. That's what's changed.
Right on. Appreciate that. And please don't feel like you need to rush your answers. Take your time.
Yeah, I'm used to rushing the answers.
Lay it out. No.
Get off the call.
No,
and
I got
be
you.
saying, man, I didn't even explain that thoroughly, so it's probably misunderstood. And but thank you for saying that, because I do feel rushed, because every call is usually rushed normally.
I get it, and there's always a lot to get to. Anybody else? Anybody want to jump in? Got something that they want to raise, question, respond to?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm thinking about, and maybe it's because something that I'm working on, and something you said before in the interview, but let's say how we have these militant or pseudo-militant organizations, if you want to call them, and they claim to protect the community, but they fail to protect the women that are in those organizations. And so when things happen, I don't know if my internet went out, but if things happen, sometimes we're not in a position infrastructurally or organizationally to protect those women, and we actually have to depend on the state or involve the state, law enforcement or whoever, because we don't have like the infrastructure to some of those internal issues. So I guess I wanted to kind of hear your thoughts about, you know, when we have these supposedly protective organizations who can't protect the women and children in these organizations, our lack of organization, lack of infrastructure leads us to like literally depending on the state that we supposedly don't trust or respect or that are enemy to us. So I'm just curious how you navigate that space.
Right. By your question, very provocative question, brother. You probably have a better answer understanding than me, but I know that it's an issue, and not only with the protection of our sisters, mothers and grandmothers and aunts and nieces, our ability to protect them, and even before it gets to something, to just give them that due respect, because it is a patriarchal society, and even though we may just say that we're not in terms of movement organizations, but the practice is often is. You have to be intentional to get to change that. But yeah, we do. And I gave the example. I don't know Black Men Build, if I gave the example of when the police kill us in the streets, how attorneys come out to represent them, the families, and for those that even get attention for that matter. And we're hoping and we're praying and we're demanding that the judicial system indict these police. And then when they do, we're hoping and praying that they get convicted and they get time. And then when they do, as Chauvin did with George Floyd and with the brother that the three white dudes killed running through the neighborhood,
Arbery.
Yeah, we are very pleased with that, and it strengthens the narrative of the status quo that the judicial system is fair and it's getting fairer. Bear with us, Judge. You can get justice from this system, and we look for that. And this is the same system that's racist system that's responsible for mass incarceration and the long-term incarceration of Asian people in prison, including our freedom fighters, political prisoners. And yet, every victory that is, every white person that they throw under the bus, and they got plenty to throw under the bus, we herald that. And as far as the apolitical, meaning not a revolutionary thinking. When I say apolitical, I don't mean that our people are not aware of social conditions at all. So it's not, hopefully it's not condescending, but not with lack of revolutionary thinking and really understanding, then, we're how those victories, those spotted victories are actually adding strength to the system that's oppressing us. And once again, we don't have no other mechanism, as your question indicates, to be able to do for our own. I mean, what are you going to do? Knock on brother man's door? Being up on his way, maybe you should, but could you? Brother man may come to the door with a gat. You better, what you doing up in here? And now you may have another problem. You have to kill him. So this is now the easy question. And the thing about it, I've become infuriated but comfortable in knowing that I may not have all the ready answers for that. When I was 16, I thought I had the answers to everything. Now I realize how stupid I am. Because this is being facetious. So somebody asked at the end of a program, well, what do you think should be done? And a brother or a sister gives a long answer. And I'm saying to myself, man, nobody else must know that, because that ain't happening. You see that? I'm being cynical, of course, but man, you gave a long answer about what you think should be done. So what you think should be done evidently is not being done, or nobody knows that that's the right way to go. So now if you ask me what I think should be done, I said, man, do the best that you can do, and I can add this to it. But I may not have all those, because it's a complex. If you don't think this is a complex situation we're in, it's so full of so many contradictions, dialectics, and and overlapping things is because this is a big complex society, the United States of America. It's not, like I said, and Black Men Build, it's not some African country with 2 or 3 ethnic groups. And the people's mores and values right off the bat. Now this is like people immigrated here. There's so much going on because of the technology and the distraction that Malcolm and George talked about. It's real as can be, and it's a hot mess, as my wife would say. It's a hot mess. It really is a hot mess, but we don't have the infrastructure. The Panther Party, I can be proudly say that, full of patriarchy, but at least maybe that's not the segue, but at least. But there were the programs, the survival programs that Comrade Huey put out, that we tried to institute, were to be an example for how governing ourselves may look like. It may have been, we just tried to do that. That was not only just tendering to the needs of the people, but also trying to give a model of what self-governance would look like when you can feed, clothe, and shelter yourself. And I don't know, we never got to the point of grasping hold of the means of production because we are so anti-capitalist. We didn't know how to even invest and make money, except if you're going to expropriate from a bank or have a bake sale. It's 2 extremes. How are you going to survive and make your program survive? Well, we got cupcakes we selling on the corner, or brother man, sister lady going to go in this joint and stick it up. Because we're so anti-capitalist, we didn't even know how to navigate investments. Black people probably didn't know back then neither anyway, but even those that wanted to. So we never was able to get a stream of money going, for us to sustain our programs because we weren't even thinking like that. And when you do start thinking like that, you become invested in the system because that's the source of your money. This thing is a mess, man.
I think if I could jump in,
yeah,
Jihad, you're touching on something that indirectly, right? And political prisoners are political prisoners because of their thought crimes and their actions, right? Against the system itself, against the government. This is what separates them from the other prisoners, right? Who are in there for political natures as well, right? But they're in there specifically because of the political nature of their thoughts and their actions. And that came from organization, that came from study, right? And so for you to even make that assessment that you all were so anti-capitalist implies that there was an understanding and assessment of capital in the first place that you all as teenagers had to do that the way of study that came by the way of political organization, right? This is why a lot of these brothers and sisters are still locked up in the hole, being senior citizens, right? Suffering death by incarceration because of that analysis, right? That analysis and that ability to organize and build organizations, right? Of folks who understand that this Babylon has got to go, right? That for the Panthers and for folks like George Jackson in particular, who are Marxist-Leninists and believe that the revolution came by way of the gun, right? That there was no peaceful reforming out of this, right? That there had to be a direct confrontation to seize the means of production and seize the power of the state. And these folks are also operating in the time of the 50s and 60s when there are global revolutions around the world. Cuba won, right? Angola won, Ghana won, Mozambique, right? Cape Verde, China, Vietnam, right? And so folks generally believe and truly believe that the revolution was around the corner, right? And that this was the way forward. And when COINTELPRO happens, when the factories shut down in the 70s, and all those union jobs that once, gave opportunities to Black people, to poor people, families were gone, right? The population is under Reaganomics in a whole nother situation now with the crack era, where it gets to what Jihad was saying about you go into this survival mode, right? But even those survival programs were based off the context and conditions of the places that those chapters were in. Again, a political strategy and analysis that only comes by way of organization, right? And study. And what we have now, unfortunately, is the remnants of a lost war, right? Because Dr. Shakur was a prisoner of war. Sekou Ding was a prisoner of war. Folks were prisoners of war, right? Under the laws of the United Nations that says colonized people have the right to armed struggle against their colonizers. That goes from Puerto Rico, that goes to Harlem, that goes to Hawaii, right? Under international law, folks have that right to strike back at that colonizer, right? But we're left with communities decimated economically, politically, and socially, right? That left nothing to mount as a fight back. And so what we have now today are not political organizations, but we have nonprofits, right? And the folks who are leading the movement, who are leading the struggle, are nonprofit organizations bound by the confines of big philanthropy. And I can say this, I'm a director of a nonprofit, right? They're not political organizations. Mm-hmm. They're not revolutionary organizations. You are bound by the confines of philanthropy, and you have to understand that, right? Mm-hmm. But if that's all you have for movement, then we're in a very different situation from back in the day, because all you need is good slogans, hot t-shirts, a few movement celebrities, a Twitter account that's popping, and you off to the races. And folks don't have to have that analysis. Folks don't have to have that commitment to community. Folks don't have to have that commitment to study to really come up with the strategies necessary to move beyond single issues. We can talk about abolition, but folks love talking about abolition without talking about the state. Right? And if we understand that prison and police are fundamental and foundational to the creation and maintaining of the capitalist bourgeois state, then your talk of abolition and your nonprofit work on abolition is a direct attack on the state, which is why you see Biden then turn around with his Safe America program and giving $37 billion to the police, because they understand that very clearly. But because we don't have that political analysis, and those organizations, our elders and our warriors are left to vanquish behind the walls. Senior citizens already in their 70s, suffering cancer, suffering diabetes. Mumia has gone to 2 diabetic shocks and COVID. Matulu is in terminal stage 4 colon cancer, suffered COVID. Imam Jamil Al-Amin suffering COVID. Maroon was only released because he was terminal, right? And it's this understanding that there's a disconnect between that struggle and that era and the one now, because there's an ideological disconnect. There's an organizational disconnect, and our folks can't understand what that means, right? And so we've been sucked in because the only vehicles that then we had left was the electoral process, right? And I think it's Cedric Robinson who writes about in the 80s from revolutionaries to I forgot what it's called, right? But the politicians and the electeds in that whole wave. And so it makes it very difficult. And this is why we still today, even with all the sloganeering, even with the appropriation of Black nationalists and revolutionary nationalists imagery and rhetoric from back in the days, the Queen Mother Moors, the Asadas, the Malcolms, and all that you see today, right? There's still a disconnect. It still gets transferred into electoral politics. And why our folks, those who do make it out the tombs, those who do make it out the walls, come home to nothing, right? Herman Bell came home to nothing. Herman Ferguson came home to nothing. Sundiata came home to nothing, right? Marshall Edwin Conway came home to nothing, except the other elders, their comrades who was working with them, who were the only ones who have been working to get them out, to welcome them home. There's no celebration from big organizations and big movement. There is no welcome home committees. There are no funds. Shout out to community movement builders who do have their Panther veteran a resource program, and some folks, mutual aid fund. And folks in a couple folks in New York who do it. But other than that, our folks come home to nothing, have to figure out now how do you pay rent at 74, 75 years old, sick. You done spent 50, 40, 30 years behind the walls. You sacrifice everything for the people. And the same folks who are making name and book deals and $1 million mansions out in California off the struggle that you made, off the struggle that you fought, right? The family that you gave up. Because 9 out of 10 political prisoner families don't have good relationships with their kids, because their children can understand that what their children know that you gave me up for the struggle, right? That I grew up motherless. I grew up fatherless. I had these conversations with Nahanda Abiodun, rest in peace, in Cuba about this, right? Exiled for her role in the liberation of Assata Shakur, and what that meant as a mother, losing her relationship to her children as a result. Dilcia Pagan, another mother who did 19 for the Puerto Rican movement, losing her relationship with her son, to come home to nothing, to then figure out, scrounge around, asking money, how you going to make rent? It's an ideological disconnect that we have that goes much deeper than folks want to admit. We're cool with romanticizing revolution, right?
man.
We're cool with writing poems and beautiful artwork and saying, "Oh man, if it was me." We got brothers in the chat right now who've been doing all week. If it was me, boy, I'd be. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. The level of military commitment that takes to go underground to fight that, right? You have no family, you have no friends, you have no life, you have no freedom. All you have is the struggle. All you have is the mission, the task at hand, and the small cadre that is there with you. And that is it. And you ride out until the day they come and get you, because you know they're going to get you. And you're going to be in a tomb, or you're going to go be in a box. And that's the commitment that you make. And most of us are not prepared for that. Most of us are not prepared for that, because we are not ideologically prepared and disciplined enough to even read a book, to join a study group, to do the hard work of building an organization, listen to the people what they want. And 9 out of 10 times, the people are not going to want the super revolutionary thing you want. The young lords prove that, right? The young lords proved that when they went to Harlem in the 1970s talking about revolution, and when they asked the people, what is it you want? They said, pick up the garbage. The garbage men don't come here and pick up the garbage. So their first campaign was to get the garbage picked up. Because our rhetoric and our sloganeering is always too far out ahead of the people. And then you end up on suicide missions with your comrades dead, or you in a tomb for 40, 50 years because ain't nobody coming to get you. And worse off, they're going to forget you. They're going to forget you. And too many of us are not prepared to make that sacrifice. Right? And this is the energy that Jihad brought last time when he was talking about why these brothers then have to go into these courtrooms, into these border paroles, right? And with their hat in their hand, with their heads down, and talking about, that probably wasn't the best move. And, I learned my lesson or whatever. Because what else they got? The state is committed to killing them. And like it does with a lot of senior citizens who are currently locked up in prisons, it's death by incarceration. It's death by incarceration, because we can't get our shit together out here, right? And fight those fights. Meanwhile, here goes Supreme Court. Not only did they get rid of abortion rights, but they also got rid of Miranda, right? The Supreme Court ruled that police cannot be held accountable and brought to justice if they forget to read you your Miranda rights. So now we don't got Miranda rights. And they also got $37 billion more, right, to grow their armies. We got to get our shit together. And that's the lesson that come back from George. And George was very clear. He had a political, and I'll stop with this. He had a political line. He had a very clear political line. He was a Marxist-Leninist. The Panthers were Maoists, right? The survival programs comes from the Serve the People projects of revolutionary China and Chairman Mao. Folks got to read. Folks got to study. Folks have to get their politics and their ideology in line. I don't care what it is. If it's anarchism, there's all kinds of Kropotkin, Bakunin, Malatesta, Makarenko, Magon. I can go on and on. On the red side, what are you? You Leninist, you Trotsky, you Mao, what is it? Saying dialectical materialism, scientific and socialism, and all that random ass stuff isn't enough. That's the lessons we learned from George. That's the lessons we learned from Matulu. That's the lessons we learned from Masada. Last thing I'll do here, what we like to do with our political prisoners also is remove them from their politics. Right? And so in these rallies that Jihad talked about, free all political, free all, we remove them from their politics. They all had different politics. Asada, Sekou, Sundiata, Matulu are members of the Republic of New Africa. They're not Black Panthers. Stop calling Asada Shurkop a Black Panther. Right? The BLA and the Black Panther Party, two separate organizations. There's a connection between two separate organizations. Understand what that means. Understand what the ideological differences are. There's ideological differences between Huey and George Jackson. That ultimately, right, leads to what ended up happening to Huey Newton in the 80s out there in Oakland. You got to read and study and prepare, because like Jihad said over here, the right is getting real prepared. They are very prepared for what's coming next. And we out here playing games.
Hey, don't make that the last thing you say on this platform, Hiram, or today even in this discussion. Definitely appreciate that. That's what I'm talking about. That's selfishly, that's the good shit. I like. This is preaching to me. I'm ready to turn the tables over. This is what I'm talking about. This is how I like this.
But this is why they can't come home, right? This is why they can't come home. And you know what? I'll leave with this.
Oh man,
there's two examples. The Puerto Rican movement has freed every single political prisoner we have had, every single one since the 50s, right? That doesn't come without concessions, though. And while you have the whole Puerto Rican nation rallying, the politicians, the right wing, the left wing, everything, right? That was made possible 2 times. In 1950, because Fidel Castro in the Cuban Revolution had a prisoner exchange of the CIA agents they had captured, right? And traded them for the release of the 5 nationalists who attacked the House of Representatives in 1954, Lolita Lebrón, Rafael Cáncer Miranda, and the rest. In the 90s, when the Puerto Ricans get released again, that was released because the Clintons are leaving the White House. Hillary is moving back to New York to become senator. At the time, Puerto Ricans are the largest Latino population in New York City. It was a concession for votes to the Democratic Party, right? Because we don't have movement strong enough, you always have to concede. You always have to make these concessions with the state and with your enemies. The reason the Puerto Ricans came out was a strong public movement, but these concessions. Oscar comes home again because Hillary is running for president when Obama is leaving. The problem with the new African prison, the black prisons, is that they can't get that public support, not from the community, but most importantly from elected officials, right, and from clergy and from the movements. Why? Because of the bodies.
Well,
because of the bodies. Because folks don't want to address the issue of the dead police officers. Folks don't want to talk about George Jackson because they don't want to deal with the violence of George, right? Revolution is violent. And again, this comes back to your political lineage, your political line on how you see freedom is up. These folks don't want to have to deal with that. And so protect their own politics and protect their own good standing here in the state, they disavow them. They distance themselves from them. But it's a political decision, right? Jared, you know this because Dr. Joy James comes out here all the time talking about why they don't talk about George. Ruthie Wilson don't talk about George. Angela don't talk about George. A lot of your favorite abolitionists don't talk about George. They want to talk about the violence of revolution, the consequences that come with that. Same goes with our elected officials and all, which is why our black political prisoners languish, dying behind those walls.
I think that there hasn't been a thorough enough diagnosis and prognosis of COINTELPRO, which kind of was the linchpin for our modern to set us on the path to our modern condition. Because when you look at the counter, and a lot of people are very clear on speaking about the counterintelligence, but a big part of that counterintelligence, once you subvert literally and figuratively the intelligence, counter the intelligence, subvert the movement, then there becomes a campaign to sustain those successes. And we look at the assassinations, the incarcerations, the exiles, but we often drop the ball at the sustained propaganda and miseducation and dilution of the struggle that went on for the masses, because the counterintelligence program had targeted, and we've read, Ward Churchill, we've all read the COINTELPRO papers. We all know the targeted, but it wasn't just targeted organizations and individuals. They targeted the population, the mass population that gave birth to these individuals. And so when you say, oh, there's no mass struggle for our political prisoners, there actually have been some extremely large campaigns for, and I'm throwing up air quotes, for our political prisoners. If you go back to the Free Tukey movement that was spearheaded by Snoop Dogg, if you look at the Free Meek Mill in Philadelphia, and you look at what's happening now with the brewing Free YSL with Young Thug and Gunner, those are now the political prisoners. So it's not that Black people still don't have a desire to free our prisoners. It's just we've allowed the systems and institutions of white hegemony and their miseducation and their counterintelligence, subversion of our intelligence, not just our access to information, but the subversion of our ability to interpret information. So when I entered college, the first thing I learned about was Mumia and Leonard Peltier. Whenever someone, if no one knew anything, even the apolitical students all knew Leonard Peltier and Mumia. And as I talk to, I have a son who's a sophomore in college and a son who's a freshman in school. If you say prisoner or political prisoner, they say, oh, Young Thug, YSL, yeah, they RICO YSL, and RICO is now the counterintelligence, and now the feds is coming. When the feds come for our community, when you ask them what does that look like, feds coming and attacking the Black community, Geechee, y'all, the big Larry Hoover movement, the two biggest artists in the world, Drake and what's the other guy's name?
Kanye West.
I can't remember. I think that might
Kanye,
be him.
Kanye.
Some weirdo.
Kanye.
Cool.
Mhm.
Some
Kanye, yeah.
Huh? Who? What?
Kanye.
Anyway, what?
Coogee.
Huh? Okay, stop. Y'all some fans. I hear y'all keep screaming his name. Okay, y'all. Kanye.
Nobody's screaming his name. Your audio's messed up.
They came and filled up every day I go up the Lakeshore. There's this huge Bear Stadium. I've never been in there, but the Chicago Bears, they came and filled that stadium up to free Larry Hoover for growth and development, and everybody from the South Side that went to that free Larry, whatever, had to literally and figuratively, but literally many of them step over the corpses of our young people to get from the South Side to head downtown to free Larry Hoover. So it's really contamination. So our community has both the willingness and the desire to rally around incarcerated individuals. But now it's just like the reparations movement. Reparations went from decolonization, Black liberation, Black power to putting Black people in a better position to consume goods and services from capitalism, to put us in a better position to enjoy the spoils of capitalism. That's what reparations has devolved to, or been corrupted to become. So the political prisoner movement, the political prisoner energy has been diverted through counterintelligence programs and sustained ignorance, because we're beyond counterintelligence. Ain't no more intelligence to really counter in that sense. Now we went from counter our intelligence to sustain our ignorance, where we have rallies across the city and it started with when this Tookie Williams things really blew up, and who's a serial killer. I didn't know much about Tookie, in the West Coast, but when I started looking, I'm like, this guy is literally a serial killer, and even the crime he was convicted and incarcerated and they made that movie with the other guy, Jamie Foxx. Let me stop playing with Jamie Foxx and how he transformed his life. But from that moment, it's just been all these movements. Even Lil Wayne, when Lil Wayne had to go do that 1-year bid, there was this huge swell from the community, free Lil Wayne. And Drake was wearing a free Meek Mill t-shirt. And the problem with countering that is it is actual injustice. But we have to make a distinct line, because all prisoners are political. But some people of our people in our community get locked up because of our oppressors' politics and agendas. Other people get locked up because of the Black community's politics and agendas. And that's a distinction. If I'm out here working on behalf of the community and I get locked up for those politics versus I'm apolitical, I'm not engaged in struggle, I might even be a parasite or preying upon my own community, and I get locked up for the system politics. And we need to begin to educate and demonstrate that. When the free Meek thing was going, I was like, well, isn't Mumia from the same spot? And the few times I've been to Philly, or I participated in any Free Mumia actions, it was mostly white people. But this Free Meek thing was strictly all black. So, and that's, I think that's where we are. It's a sustained ignorance as a byproduct of counterintelligence.
I'm not. I promise you, I'm not going to debate this topic, but I just want to reiterate in terms of the context of our discussion today what Arnold Schwarzenegger wrote when condemning Tukey to death. He was not condemning Tukey Williams to death because he was a quote unquote serial killer or for any of his gang related activity. He was condemning him to death specifically because Tukey had dedicated his book to George Jackson and Assata Shakur and Malcolm X. Schwarzenegger was very clear about that was why he was condemning Tukey to death. And I think
can we say something about that though? You talk about the crimes that the system convicts people of, and the system accuses people of crimes, prosecutes them, presents evidence, and goes through it. Dr. John Henry Clark said, our Supreme Court, our judicial system is our grandmother's kitchen table. Regardless of what the system says about somebody, whether they're an angel or a demon, an asset or a liability to the system, we have to sit and start to talk amongst ourselves. Just because someone is praised by the system doesn't mean they're also worthy of our praise, as the brother mentioned Obama. Or just because someone is condemned by the system doesn't mean that they are necessarily acting in our interest or going on. When I look at Keaty's research and the bodies that he caught, or the dead bodies, not just the family that he was convicted of murdering, but the other crimes he was never accused of or prosecuted for. When I look up the definition of a serial killer, and when I look, and this is what people were saying, everyone was talking about redemption, the book and the movie. But when I look at the harm done to my community, I don't care what the system says about you, whether they say you're a saint or a sinner or killer or a healer, whatever the system, I'm looking at the impact on my community, independent of the judicial system. I'm looking at the reverberating impact that I have to deal with today, even with Larry Hoover, as I raise two sons on the south side of Chicago and send them out to dwell in their community, to live and act in their community. And I looked at that impact, and someone wanted to tell me, well, the system is against them, so we should be for them. As the brother said,
that wasn't my point, but I don't want to have this argument right now. I don't want to take up the rest of the show with this argument, but that wasn't my point. But right. Let's move on.
I'm just saying, regardless of what I got you. Independent of what Schwarzenegger says, we can draw our own conclusions, do our own investigations, and make our own assessments, independent of what the legal system says.
All right, I feel like my point got lost, but let's move on. Let me let others jump in here. Anybody, Jihad, did you want to respond to any of that, or particularly to what Hiram was saying, or to anything, or Geechee, Hiram? Anybody want to jump back in?
Well, I know Hiram gave a very, very, very clear breakdown on where we're at, also, and what has changed, and the complexities of our movement. I wanted to, at some point in time before we off, I do want to try to address maybe some possible strategies moving forward, now that we're analyzing the dilemma that we're in, bringing it up to speed 2022 with the movement and its inability to effectively organize people around political prisoners. And I would say that a lot of times when we talk about the problems of the movement and the problems of anything, the problems of our Black youth, the problems of whatever's happening, just wanted to take a moment to really uplift and applaud all those successes that are happening, that are trying to address these issues as we are laying them out on the table. So, and I say that for listeners, saying, well, I've been out here working for the last 25 years, and we have, X amount of youth doing this and that. So all those sisters and brothers that are involved in all those type of initiatives, I'm quite sure all of us on the program, acknowledge you, uplift you, and honor you. I just wanted to throw that in.
Hey, no, I appreciate that. And just to be clear to you, Jihad, and everybody else, we have no official end time. We usually end roughly around 10 o'clock. But even if I do have to leave at 10 o'clock, you all can keep going. The stream can stay up, and I can shut it down later or from wherever I have to be, because we do have a doctor's appointment to get to at 10:30. But I'm not shutting it down. But I'm just saying. Okay,
I'm going to switch over at 10 o'clock too, because I have a 10 o'clock meeting for work.
Jake,
and then you're always welcome. All of you are always welcome back. So I want us to do as much as we can, but I don't want us to feel so rushed that we don't think that there's never another opportunity. But anyway, Hiram, go ahead.
Real quick, and a question for you, Brother Jihad. And it's come up in the chat of the remix. Shout out to the remixers, my fellow remixers out there. Is the issue of what current support looks like for the prisons. And for a long time, for a lot of these prisons, be they Mumia, be it Maroon, be it the Move 9, be a lot of folks, has always been primarily the small group of friends and comrades that they had and a whole bunch of white folks. Organizations like the Anarchist Black Cross, anarchist groups across the country for years have been really big on prison letter writing. The Malcolm X grassroots movement has done that. Jericho, right, does that work. And what I would love for you to speak on specifically is who was Safia Bukhari, right? Who for me, I feel is the godmother of the political prisoner support movement. And what was her role? What was her impact, right? What is Safia Bukhari's legacy as it pertains to political prisoners?
Right. Safia Bukhari was a Black Panther, and I think, well, as it relates to political prisoners, to get right to that, she was one of the founders of the Jericho movement, along with Bubba Herman Ferguson and Comrade Jalil Muttaqeen, who had did 49 years in prison. She's fiery organizer, and she was able. I guess her legacy would be in her ability to rally the forces, to rally the troops, to infuse us with so much energy and motivation to get the job done. Jericho has been in existence now since 1998. I was in prison when it started, and even when I came home, I was on federal parole for 6 years. I couldn't associate with a single person. And they was hawking me, particularly after 9/11, being a Muslim, that added feature there. So I had to be very cautious of how I moved about. And so for 6 years after coming home, I was not able to associate with any comrades, definitely no BLA or Panthers, and no involvement with Jericho or anything of that nature. But even with that, she paid. When we talk about prisoners coming home and still needing support, Jericho helped me with my rent a couple of times and other needs when she was able just to chime in and ask me briefly how I was doing, and catching me at times where maybe was just struggling with a lot of different issues, financial or whatever the case may be. But Safia's name and legacy have been entombed in the movement. She's an energizer and a motivator. I can say that for sure. And her passing on to the ancestors was a tremendous loss. But her work is you see the seed, the product of her work right now. So I was honored myself to be able to pick up that mantle of leadership for Jericho since I think 2009, 2010. Being the chairperson of the Jericho movement.
And just
can I just say real quick, Howard, my bad. One of my favorite parts of Lilu Lee's documentary, All Power to the People, is where she's on camera and she says something like, it wasn't the Panthers and their programs that made me join the Panthers. It was the New York police that made me join the Panthers. Anyway, sorry, Hiram, go ahead, man.
Yeah, no. Just a follow-up question was, what is that support? What is it like for prisoners when they come home? Right? Like you went in most of y'all went in as kids, in a particular time in history, in a particular moment for particular reasons. You suffer torture, you suffer just unbearable conditions in the gulags of the United States. And then you come home. Sundiata, Jalil, right? Sekou. What is that like for prisoners when they come home? What are the struggles that they face? What are the needs that they come home to? What are the restrictions, like you said, the forced isolation that they still have to live under, even so-called being free? What if you can just articulate some of that for us and help us understand?
Right. Well, definitely for each. Well, there's some general things that happen, and then there's peculiarities. You know, everybody's situation being somewhat different. I think for me, well, first of all, one big difference from my situation than a lot of the prisoners that have been freed over the decades is that I was a federal prisoner. And I say that to make this financial distinction for what it's worth, is that I came home with about $7,000. And most prisoners come home with absolutely nothing. In the federal system, when I was there, they had the prison factories, which I worked, which is very exploitative. But I made a decision to work there because I had a son that I wanted to still contribute to his mother. As he lives in New York, which I spent the weekend with him this past, like he's 47. So this month I'll be 68 years old. And so I had him, first time I saw him was looking through the plexiglass of county jail. But I think financial is the biggest challenge that we would all have. Which is a challenge that people that never went to prison have, you know, coming out in our communities. And after the bling of coming home, so it's coming, you know, then after a while, it kind of, you know, breaks down into your 24/7 grind again, and not having any money I came home, I was 46 years old. Yeah, 46. So I'm not coming home when I'm in my 70s like Sundiata, or in 80s rather, for that matter. You know, I came home. So like I said, everybody's situation is different. I'm trying to answer in general, and as for me myself, I came home still able to work, still able to get a job, if you will. I didn't have any financial support. I wasn't one of the celebrated cases, if you will, because the political prisoner movement had not ramped up to that point yet. I guess if I stayed 25 more years, I would have been. You know, had a special committee to free Jihad Abdulmumit. But it wasn't until the late 90s that probably anybody even knew my name. Just real talk. And I wasn't really tripping on it at all. Like I think I mentioned on Black Men Bill, the Shanti, now when we got busted, we weren't the ones that's considered political prisoners as such. That was the Huey and Bobby and, you know, those, the Panther 21, those cases that really captured the news media attention. Me expropriating bank monies and getting in a shootout in Columbus, Ohio on January 23rd, 1976 wasn't necessarily news as such. And when my time in the Panther Party, I joined when I was 16 years old, like Mumia, Jalil, and Shanti. 16 seemed like a golden age for a lot of us joining the party, and just selling Panthers and sweeping the floor and being an OD, officer of the day in the office, answering the telephone, you know, doing that type of scrub work. No microphone is in our face at that time. Like, we weren't the spokesman of the party, if you will. Just a worker, you know, and so drinking my wine, out there selling papers, you know, messing with the sisters and all this type of stuff until we actually went underground and really got busy. And so that's that. So going into prison for decades now. Could y'all hold on 1 second? Somebody's
Sure.
come to the door right quick.
All right, no problem. We can, yeah, go ahead.
So I'm curious. I understand that there's this, as Diallo said, this mass campaign to keep us ignorant. But then I tend to wonder how much of the internal contradictions is causing. So Brother Haram talked about the anarchists, talk about how, the communists. We talk about just even these different concepts. Today's you have like the University of Kemet Press, you have the Barudis, you have like you have all these different people, and I'm curious how y'all feel about these, I guess, internal contradictions and internal disagreements that we have. How heavy is that compared to what the state and propaganda is doing? I'm not even talking about like the black capitalist stuff. I'm talking about like the internal people who supposedly radical revolutionary, writing 20+ books and shit like that.
Well, I'm sure part of the COINTELPRO.
Also,
sorry, my bad.
Right, you have people who might be career authors.
Uh-oh.
Mm-mm.
We'll bring him back in a second. Jihad, I know you had to cut yourself off, but to the extent that we got Geechee's question about COINTELPRO, as I understood it, playing on existing contradictions within the community.
Yeah, we can get to that question, but my
Yeah.
question was just saying financially is the biggest probably issue of any political prisoner coming home then and now, But I was just making the distinction myself. I was able to work, and a lot of the prisoners that we know now that's coming home are much older, and they're not working, so they're just kind of like really in need of our continued support and getting connected with services such as that. So I was able to kind of like fend for myself to like any other person working, getting to the work field. I was fortunate enough to I started an HIV project with Dr. Matula Shakur and Tim Blunk and some other prisoners in Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary. I just did it because I was trying to get out on parole, but it turned out to be a very powerful program. It's piloted throughout the Bureau of Prisons, as it turns out. And I didn't know what HIV, I don't have HIV, but I didn't even know what it is. Really didn't care at that time. I was just trying to do anything to get out on parole. And so when I did get out, a couple of years after being home, I responded to this advertisement of HIV counselor, and they hired me on the spot. They said that this job entails going into the prisons and jails. I said, I'm on federal parole. There's no way in the world I can do that. But they let me do that because my conviction was in the 70s. They said it was over 5 years ago. It was amazing. Then my parole officer said, okay, well, you just don't F up, And so I started going back into the prisons and jails after doing the 23 years. When I was still on parole, I got off in 2003. I started for 3 years. I was going into prison and jails doing classes in HIV testing and case management of individuals that's positive coming out. And that's still my job for the last 19 years. And so I was able to kind of be self-sustaining. And we're not all self-sustaining, but, in a relative type of way, better than a lot of my comrades now that was coming out in their 70s and 80s, not able to work. Like I said, I was 46. I kickboxed for 3 years after I got out. I was in kind of like real good penitentiary shape. The irony of it, when you came out at that golden age, all my homies from New Jersey, I was able to see most of them were doing way worse than me, which is a statement about the beatdown 24/7 of capitalism, the demoralization, lack of healthcare, hepatitis, and HIV, and drug addiction, and alcoholism, and busted relationships. I didn't go through any of that. I came home Superman. But every comrade can't say that. That's why I say every comrade getting out has a different story. So I was fortunate enough not to be beset by any illnesses. I was able to save and earn a lot of money when I came home to kind of sustain myself, at least for a minute. $7,000, not a lot of money, but it's more than coming home with no money. And so my situation itself was slightly different, coming out of the federal system as coming out of the state system, which doesn't give you any money for anything really, and you really are financially dependent. So I kind of planned that out. And the last thing I want to say, I didn't have a life sentence where I had to figure it out. They didn't let me out of any favor or anything like that. I reached the end of my time legally. by parole standards, and after being denied parole, in spite of that, a couple of times I did get out. So it wasn't nothing miraculous that I got out. I did my time, and they let me out. And I didn't have a police body. I had a bank robbery, as they would say what it is, expropriation. So my crime, hear me. My action wasn't here. Okay, don't throw nothing at me, you guys. My situation wasn't as heavy duty as somebody that's convicted of killing a cop allegedly. Mine was just bank explosion. And the only reason I think I got, not the only, but I think I got as much time as I even did, is because of, as I explained on Black Men Build, was because of our political position. Not so much even in the expropriation itself, but in my actions in court, not standing up, not acknowledging the judge. He was infuriating. He couldn't wait to get to sentence me, like that. But and I will say that it was a shootout in Columbus, Ohio, and we were so proud and dedicated to what we were doing when the black sheriff was driving myself and a comrade that nobody knows now, but Lorraine Alexander, back to Franklin County Jail. We told that brother, we're part of the Liberation Forces, and we want you to let us go. We actually said that to this guy. Now, what do you think he did besides not letting us go?
I was going to say not let you go.
Well, actually, this is a statement about how,
oh, man.
And I don't want to veer off, and then I get to the other question that you was asking about COINTELPRO maybe, but, just our movements back then even resonated with people that definitely wouldn't have done on the far fringe of what we were doing, but that guy, he looked at us in the rearview mirror, and he just gave us that look like that, so much for that. I tried because there was no secret why we're doing this, and we announced it. And when I got back to the jail, he came by my cell and gave me a Coke and a pack of Benson and Edges, I think they're called. I smoked for about 3 months. And he said, man, I hear what you're saying. I wish you all well. And he disappeared. And when I went to court, the two bank tellers, the white ladies, I'm the only black person in court. And this is another statement about how the movements had a little more power. When Heimer mentioned about vibing off of the struggles in the different countries around the world, North Africa and Latin American countries in the Middle East. These ladies, like, I'm the only black person in court, and I purposely braided half of my hair and looked just as crazy as I could in the courtroom. And they refused to identify me. Matter of fact, one of them, the prosecutor, was really messed up. One of them winked at me. I know I was cute and all that, but but that was to me, these are examples of that, people kind of like feeling our struggle in their ways, and I mean, it was some serious moments. I'll never forget them, so I just wanted to share that experience.
No, right on. Geechee, go ahead and follow up with your question, and let Jihad respond.
I mean, I don't know if the internet gods is not letting me participate, but I think more so of like this, again, the internal contradictions. And I think, you hold up Safira Bakari and then Ricky send the link, but I'm curious how much the internal contradictions that we have, like, again, you have all these different thoughts out there. You have people or elders saying that, you need to study these type of people. So you might have a University of Kemet Press, a Baba Baruti. Then you have brothers like yourself and Lorenzo Irvin and these people. And again, I'm not throwing shade to people who might be more so of career authors versus people who actually was in the struggle and have also maybe written some things and said some things. But how much of the contradictions internally is causing as much conflict as the thrust to keep us ignorant, or the thrust to keep us apolitical, to make apolitical look sexy? Like, so you have your anarchists, you have your communists, you have your people who want to take over the state, you have people who don't want the state to be there. And I guess I see that in the struggle, the intellectual struggle, but organized, I mean, you have people not even concerned about die like this, like Brother Harron was saying, and they're more concerned about clean water and stopping bruh from beating on women and shit like that. So I guess I'm curious to hear some thoughts around there.
Well, I think that counterintelligence program under the first Frank Church Committee was deemed to be legal, even though nothing was ever done about it. And it just proliferated into other names. Now, matter of fact, everything that they said about the counterintelligence program about being illegal is legal today under different programs. So much, that's a couple of steps back, going backwards in the more repressive government responses. Now it's all legalized, whereas before it wasn't, and coming under government scrutiny because of the demands of the people. But now none of that is happening because all bets are off, and the government does pretty much what it wants to do legally. And so I think that, okay, like I said in the beginning, if this is answering your question, I personally think my opinion is that organizations and individuals and activists, whatever roles that they were playing in the movement, whatever they were seeking to get out of it, there's either been stuck where they're at in a somewhat dogmatic way, and then you have the proliferation of people writing books and intellectual. I may travel with, and I'm not going to mention anybody's name, to talk about professors and people that have written books that get a lot of money for their presentations, talking about the Black Panther Party and the BLA, and I may be one of the presenters, and I may get $100 or maybe nothing, just some hotel stay and free travel. You're talking about me, so when I talk about me, you wrote a book or wrote books, and got letters behind your name, and you talk about us and get a lot of money because of society's standard of rewarding those that's doing that, and the brothers and sisters such as myself that's been in these actions with a weapon in our hand, in shootouts with the police, get in prison, trying to escape, continue to work inside the prison, don't care about any notoriety at all, not doing it for any fame or fortune. Meaning fame and fortune, that was not even in the psychic, in the picture, and making these type of sacrifices. You can get out and maybe be asked, to speak when we had to travel, and just somebody paying your travel fee and not even giving you honorarium, and just writing it off like that. It's like Jeruba said, he'll never do that again because he really made a beef about that. But some of us are doing it still because we just need the money, and we also, not so much we need the money, but the money is definitely a point that can't be ignored. But we definitely want to get the information out. So we seize upon any opportunity to do that. But I think the government recognizes this. They have think tanks to recognize that. And they make it very difficult for us to weld any type of unity otherwise. And I think they, okay, so let me just get this so I won't be long-winded. I think the government really understands the divisions within our ranks, the different type of thinking, how we're not able, and because of technology, as I said before, and people's access to technology and to amplify their voice, either Facebook or YouTube or whatever the case may be, I think people get more glee about that and continue to resonate in that and become less interested maybe in other type of collaborations. And so there you have that. And the ego and it's just like Black men build, there's just critical thinking when it comes to our conditions, plenty of analysis that are really on time actually, but when it comes to the critical thinking about how we can actually work together and make those internal compromises, not on your principles but on your strategies. I'm talking about movements. Because the world works on compromise. If it's not, then I'd be scared to death if any one of us got in power, because I guess you'd be more repressive than whatever. But if you're not able to embrace the other ideas of other people, of your people, or your way or the highway, or lock it down like that. And so, but the critical thinking that Black men build, that pride themselves, I really resonated with that the other day. But critical thinking, particularly as it relates to how can we work together in a real way. All right, you got it locked down when you talk about imperialism and colonialism. Okay, we wrote books about that. All brothers and sisters have to do is read it, you know. But when it comes to working together and really adjusting yourself, that's how you could defeat counterintelligence measures to keep us disunited. We have to be able to be humble enough to make sure to see that your way is not the only way of doing things. I can't say it no better than that. We have an initiative as a result of the October 25th, 2021 International Tribunal, where a panel of jurists found the United States guilty of genocide. We already know they're guilty of genocide, but we had to prove it's already been proven in a way that another effort amongst many to show people that this is the reality of our condition, this slow walk of genocide, as attorney Nkiti Taif explained very well, that because it didn't happen in a 3-month period of time or a 3-year period of time, it's happened over 4 centuries. It's become so normalized, it's readily acceptable, and we just find our way within this process of genocide, which is the annihilation of a race in part or in whole, or the stymieing of the growth or development of that race of people. And that part is more of what's happening with us. And so we don't see it. But as a result, we have this initiative called the People's Senate. And Jared, if I may, just for a minute, this initiative, it really resonates with me, because unlike other tribunals with William Patterson and W.B. Du Bois and other brothers and sisters, we have taken the time to really organize. This is not a small group of people for tendering an indictment, finding the United States guilty, and taking it to the UN. This has been a mass mobilization effort leading up into this involvement of a bunch of organizations and dozens of people, where after the tribunal, we have post-tribunal initiatives. After the Thanksgiving dinner has been served and eaten, and the dish has been cleaned, we are punching through the target with other initiatives. One of them is the development of the People's Senate off the energy of this tribunal, off the recognition of the fact that we are victims of genocide. And so what this this Senate is attempting to do, brothers, is this. We're recognizing, number one, organizations, assemblies, activists, and entities in all regions of this country that are doing phenomenal work. We have Senate organizers that would be going into these areas, asking them, would they like to become a part of this network that's going to network these entities together throughout the country. There's no ideological thrust as such, but it is progressive because it's revolutionary. So we're not coming top down with this is how it should be. We're coming with the unique strategy of recognizing what already exists, asking what already exists to become part of this network, not abandoning their mission, not abandoning their vision, not abandoning anything that they're doing, but to become a part of this sophisticated network, and from these regions, they will nominate and elect their own representatives, which we are calling senators. And the word senators was discussed for 2 years why we would say that and not anything else, because we wanted to resonate in the psychic of our own people as something legitimate and representative of what they're used to. But it's the People's Senate, a revolutionary Senate, and it's really just to give voice and connection and shared resource of what's already happening. Now, the other phase of that is to begin to educate those that become part of this Senate, to the realities of colonialism and neocolonialism. But we're not coming like that at first, because we realize that if we did that, we'll just be another entity coming on the block. We'll build up our own silos. People choose not to become a part. We figure it's more strategically wise to recognize what already exists, including those nonprofit entities, meaning those entities in the community that's figured out a way to get money from the state. but they have to be progressive in the sense we're not going to recruit reactionaries that's going to anyway. But so there is some uh, parameters of who we're seeking to recruit into this. But assemblies all across the South, the Midwest, West Coast, and definitely the Northeast. And once we have this at the end of the day, as I was explaining with Black Men Build, is that for example, freeing Mutulu Shakur, we would have hopefully recruited unions, religious institutions, and activists and organizations and people's assemblies. That's a new word that's being used to define what's happening in different areas, into this process where they agree to support one another. So when a national demand is issued, it's more likely that we'll get, exponentially thousands of more support behind any issue that we agree on, because these senators will meet regularly across the country. And so that's this I think this is a very refreshing strategy. It's not siloed. It's acknowledging other organizations that exist. It's not asking anybody to, let's say, for example, Black Men Build is not asking anybody to abort their own mission, to compromise their own mission, but to be part of a process that's being established that you have 100% voice in. And it'll be our representation, even when it comes to local or even national voting, if that's the way that's collectively decided. And there's struggles internally. Is this revolutionary or not? And I think personally it is revolutionary because it's looking with vision of where we're going. It's not just looking tomorrow, like we're going to usher in the revolution tomorrow. Because if anybody thinks that, well, then I think you're deceiving yourself. And that's my personal opinion. You're deceiving yourself because we have no infrastructure to do any of that, And when it comes to shooting, this is not a day and age where we have 9mm or 38s. Everybody's heavily armed, and you got to be careful of that. And I think one of the brothers, Hiram, I don't know, mentioned the word romantic. That's why you get captured or put in there, and your families are not supported, then you're going to see you have created a situation that wasn't well thought out because we just pushed out on the limb, or you just adventuristically jumped out there. So when we talk about revolution, if we're not talking long-term, getting to a certain point by doing some things that may even look like reform to get there, we're talking about immediacy, then to me, that's a problem. When we haven't done any homework to prepare for that. And if you think shooting it out is fun, well, then by my revolutionary brothers and sisters that's talking to yin yang, and you may not have been in a firefight and suffered the consequences of that. And I'm not talking about somebody that scares me. Fuck the government, pardon my language. But I know all these comrades, the World Trade Center bombers, and all them, they will put you in a situation where you may be full of regrets. Not because of what you stood for, because of how well you didn't think this thing out. And then now you're stuck. Everybody has, my son, if I may, 19, he's no nonsense, brothers. And I said, man, all your ops are black, man. And he grew up in a Muslim household and in a progressive household. All your ops, he's out there, strapped all the time, and a whole bunch of street stuff going on here. And now his answer is, and I want you to resonate on this, maybe somebody can comment. You know what his answer is? He said, that's all I see, Dad. He said, I'm out here in the black community. And without any real, even though he grew up in a political house, these youngsters are not really reading. They look on their cell phone and scroll through Instagram for their understanding of things. His answer is this, and there may be some hope in it, but if my op was a white racist, they'd be in trouble too. But that's not what he sees. In spite of what I say all the time, that's not what he sees when he walks out the door. He sees JoJo that dissed him on Instagram. He sees somebody else that ripped him off for that marijuana transaction. And that's what he sees. Somebody called him a bitch or something like that. Or somebody tagged his crew, and now they got to tag back. you know. But he said, if them crackers, pardon my language, was in his purview, Lord have mercy. So these youngsters out here are courageous enough in a reckless way, you know, to put in work. And we do need that front line in different situations, now and moving forward, that courage, because it does take a certain amount of courage, that you have, everybody listening, you have to search your own soul for that type of courage. But these youngsters out there, reckless and wanton as they are, there's different type of ignorance out there. Of course, everybody's on a different page, but it looks like it's the same thing. But push come to shove, there's hope that they would be our warriors. Even in the Muslim communities here, you know, they talking about my son, you know, kind of out there. But if anything happened, a threat from some white races, guess who they're calling? They're calling him. Because they ain't got the balls to stand up to any situation except to call the police. So I think there's hope in our young men and women that's out there. Education, continued education. We have comrades in New York, Jericho, Betty, and Ralph Pointer, you know, that they're there. You may know their name. They're pushing so hard about education. This education piece in our universities, in our schools, our street corners, in our rallies, which I talked about maybe, you know, earlier, is very important to eventually make people see. So the pendulum is going to swing back, like I said on Black Men Bill. It's going to swing back to a condition that will be ripe for us to respond to. So we, as organizations and activists and social media and programs like Real News, be ready to really seize the time and amplify that message and respond accordingly. So what we're doing is very important. So then we have youngsters out there, that's like my son did. When the time comes, hopefully they'll be part of our mobilization to move. If you ever seen the movie Spook Who Sat by the Door, you know, when you know you're ready and primed and ready, so that when one of these police shootings or one of this situation or another Supreme Court ruling or something else so egregious happens, it'll flip this switch, and we want to be ready on all fronts to defend ourselves, protect ourselves, to be the community programs and institutions. And I use the word institutions because that's building on just having a program, but to institutionalize our culture in a revolutionary way, to institutionalize our art, to institutionalize our education, not just have a liberation school, but to really institutionalize it, meaning to really embed it in the fabric of our communities with some permanency and sustainability is going to be. That's the work that we're doing now, and that's revolutionary work, and that requires a lot of patience. And I might be dead chronologically, age-wise, not by getting hit by a car or a bullet, but I might be dead and never see that happen. Just like the Hueys and the Malcolms and the Reverend Martin Luther King Juniors and all those, we're still fighting for the same issues, but they put their work in. Same thing with us, and you do it with patience. I may not get there. When you get there, that may sound like a kind of mealy mouth to a lot of revolutionaries, you know, but that's a hell of a statement to make. That's an acknowledgement about the longevity and the protractedness of our struggle. I'm putting in my work now. When I die, make sure you keep on going, because this is a complicated situation. It's not going to change. We don't have no infrastructure to realize what we're talking about in many respects now. And a lot of things that we're doing now may look like reform. It may look like reform until we get there. Otherwise, you will not be able to feed and clothe and shelter yourself. It may, and I'm not like that, like I might have used to been 20 years ago. I accept that. And that's why I said on the program, now I'll shut up now, is that when I die, I want to be at peace with myself, with doing what I could, and I'm not being judged on whether or not on my watch, that we gained our freedom. I wanted to be recognized as a good man, a decent person to my family, my community, to each and every one of us, a very serious person with integrity, a revolutionary, striving the best I can in the reality of what I know. That's how I would like to die. That's the page I want to die on. It's as simple as that. Because I realize that the change that we seek, may not happen for a long time. That's what life is. The history of human history has always been fighting. All these societies that existed and flourished and died and flourished and died. That's no exception here.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah, I'll shut up. I just ran.
No, I know this.
Jared
I
didn't
think
tell me
you
to
brought
shut
up a bunch of stuff. You brought up a bunch, and the part that sticks with me is when you talked about what you leave your family in, right? And you sit in that cell thinking about, not so much regrets, because oftentimes, and I've been in conversations with former PPs about, would you, given everything that you've seen, everything that you've given through, would you do it again? And those answers vary. Right, those answers are because of a lot, and again, it's that hindsight is 2020 and the political assessment of what was suicide missions, what was adventurism, what wasn't. But all that is grounded in a theoretical grounding, right? So it's not just about just reading for reading's sake, but it's reading to ground your theory. And from that political orientation and that theory is then where your projects and your decisions will come out of me based off of, right? And this is the conversation between the BLA and the Weather Underground around their cavalierism and adventurism, right? Where there were political assessments made off of both believe in armed struggle, right? But there were political assessments made around the strategic nature of what was happening and what the white folks was doing and how it was getting everybody else caught up. That's rooted in theoretical grounding. And to Geechee's point, right? Are those differences in the sectarian, nature of how that showed up back in the day worse than COINTELPRO? I don't think anything is worse than the capitalist state's assault on our people. Has it been bad? Yeah, it's bad, right? But has it been good? We do also have examples of when people's ideologies, right, can coexist at the same time. Again, Ashanti Austin, Kwesi Balagoon, whose name sits at the top, right? When we're talking about the legends of this movement, up at the top, queer anarchist BLA member. We're able to coexist and work together with Marxist Leninists, with Maoists, even though their politics, right, fundamentally differ. The Russian Revolution is not won without the anarchists, right? So there are examples where it can coexist. We also cannot be afraid of what the Cubans call that battle of ideas, right? And being able to look, we don't rock, right? And there's some things that just don't rock. Cultural nationalism and other revolutionary folks sometimes just cannot see eye to eye on the assessment breakdown of capitalism, right? What is to be done with this state, with the settler state, and just the construction of society as a whole, because ultimately we fight revolutions to reconstruct society as a whole. And sometimes you can have fundamental disagreements. Doesn't mean that it's got to turn into violence. Doesn't mean that's got to turn into bad mouthing or whatever, right? We can move forward and agree to disagree and understand that at some point in time, those things may clash, but it don't got to be right now. And for the sake of our collective liberation, we should do everything possible to try to find the areas where we do agree, where we can work on each other, right, and strike back at the state. Because ultimately the goal is, in my politic, right, is the smashing of the state. This has to be destroyed. It cannot be reformed. It cannot be, right. You cannot just seize it to then you run your own presidents and all that. It has to go, and something new has to be built in its place. We shouldn't run from ideological debates. We shouldn't run from differences. We shouldn't run from courageous conversations or being able to be like, listen, I don't agree, or I think that is wrong. But we should always keep in mind, right, that we are not each other's primary enemy. Right? We are not each other's primary and number one enemy. And as long as we can keep that in mind, I believe that we can move through some of these sectarian differences. Some of them just cannot be resolved, and that's fine. Some of them we can find avenues where we can work together on something. Like I said, we have examples with Kwesi Balagoon, Ashanti, Martin Sostre, a lot of people, right, whose politics were fundamentally different from the Marxist Leninists and the Maoists or whatever, but still were able to get down with each other in the most comrade of of ways moving forward,
Right.
and to live and to die for each other, right? So we do, to your point, we do have those examples when we have been able to do that successfully.
Right. And I think it's just a matter, really. I got to go in a minute to this other call. I think it's we agree with that. I definitely agree with what you said, as far as the goal and objective. I'm more on the page. I'm on the page now of like really critically looking at strategies to get us there, and really being honest about strategies that's been used that has not been working, and the rest of the world is moving on. And if it's not working and it hasn't been working, what can we do without betraying our own integrity and principles to make it work? And like I said, with this Senate thing, it's just a network to bring together organizations. This I might repeat myself, forgive me. So within these struggles to build this People's Senate idea, this strategy, comrades may say, well, it's not revolutionary, it's this and that. I say this strategy will allow you and your organization and your revolutionary fervor to proliferate even more. This is not taking the place of whatever the hell you may be doing or not doing, including just maybe running your mouth. This strategy will even give you space for what you think the revolution should look like to grow and develop in, more so than what the space that you're working in now. If you can feel what I'm saying, this strategy will allow us some space to work our own organizational goals that may be more like, like that. If that's how we feel we should be going, it's not to obliterate it, to invisibilize it, to nullify it, or to ask you to abort it. So this why this strategy is unique, and this strategy is being spearheaded itself by revolutionaries. So it's not like the goal of struggle and the demise of capitalism and imperialism is not being lost sight of. We just have to trust the strategy itself to get us there, and what you do, whoever, and what this person does and what this organization does, is all working toward the same thing, but we're doing different things in a very complex world called country called the United States to get us there. And hopefully we can have enough respect and patience and willing to work together. I'm not necessarily going to use the word compromise, but on strategies to be able to collaborate when we don't think the other entity is militant or revolutionary enough. I think that's a very arrogant position to take at this particular time.
George Jackson said it, right? Settle your quarrels. Fascism is already here. Settle your quarrels because fascism is already here. Comrade George said it in 1971.
And we have to learn that simple statement. Settle your quarrels. My God, man. Or go back to doing that, the line in the spook who sat by the door. It was, I always fight not to be sarcastic. He said, or you can go back to doing nothing.
Right. Dr. Ball, I know it's your show and I respect my elders. Mr. Jared. Do you mind if I say one more?
Hold on. No.
Mr. Jared, do you mind if I say one more thing? Because we are here. I know my remixes got to take off and y'all got doctor's appointments that you got to get to. I just want to say, folks, if you can, those who are listening, those who are going to watch this, please, the campaign to free Dr. Mutulu Shakur needs all hands on deck right now. Unfortunately, Dr. Shakur has been given a terminal sentence on his health, and the fight right now is unfortunately to decide where Doc gets to transition, if it's going to be behind the walls or if it's going to be at home with his family. Dr. Shakur, the accused mastermind of the liberation of Assad Shakur, the man who used acupuncture to not only heal but also politicize drug users back in the 80s when the state had flooded our neighborhoods with drugs, a legionnaire in the Republic of New Africa, just a solid brother, deserves to be home and to transition that peace. And so please visit the website, matulushakur.com, I believe it is. You can look up his name. Please get involved in that campaign. Send your letters. Call the parole board. Do that, because that brother does not deserve to die behind the walls. New Washington didn't deserve it. Phil Africa didn't deserve it. Merrill Africa didn't deserve it. Koisi Balagoon didn't deserve it. And so we just want to, please do everything we can to make sure that Doc can come home and transition in peace.
Yes, indeed. And thank you, Hiram, for that. And thank you, Brother Jared, for this is a very rare opportunity to be able to elaborate and think about what you said and re-clarify, and then to have quality feedback, and be able to have time. And I do be in the habit of rushing myself, so I thank you for saying that so many times. It was invaluable to be able to talk about it, think about what you just said. Oh no, I didn't really mean that, and be able to go back and tweak it. That was so refreshing. So Geechee and everybody, I appreciate the comments and the opportunity. This was good. I really thrived off of this.
Well, listen, I hope I definitely hope to have you come back anytime you want. I mean, I want you to please consider this platform and this space as just another of your welcome spots. So let's definitely, I'll do better to stay in touch this time around. I want to thank, despite his jokes, Hiram for producing this program. But just remind that he is the only recognized elder from Black Men Build. Not me, but and shout out to them for hosting that initial conversation with you, Jihad, and Ashanti Alston, who I believe is going to be visiting our platform with Kalanji sooner than later. But thank you all very much. And you're welcome back anytime. Hiram, you as well. Geechee, thank you. Brother Diallo, shout out to you as well. And everybody in the chat. Big thanks to everybody. Black August, Resistance is the call. A big shout out to all those commemorating that as well.
What's the call? Free them all.
Free them all.
What's the call? Free them all.
Free them all. All right, like Fred said, only we say peace to you only if you're willing to fight for it. So thanks everybody. Peace to everybody who came through this morning. Those who will see this later, thanks to you as well. Catch you next time at I Mix What I Like. Please do come back Monday morning. We're going to go through my new article on Cryptoganda. So if you get a chance, read it over the weekend and come through Monday morning with all your criticisms and responses, and let's continue the discussion then. Thanks again, everybody. Peace again if you're willing to fight for it. Catch you next time here at I Mix What I Like and all throughout the channel here at BPM. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.